Welcome to our first ever virtual annual general meeting of the Alumni Association. Wherever you are in the world, you are most welcome. I want to thank members of the Alumni Advisory Board for their dedicated service to UCT during the past year. The members of the AAB who were elected by the Alumni Association are Paki Zandile, Aditi Hanma, Jeremiah Peterson, Nobikosi Delimini, Sabake Malunga, Tumi Nara. AAB members of council elected by convocation who also sit on the Alumni Advisory Board include Dr. Shwaib Mandra, Professor Kit Vaughan, Marlene LaRue. And I want to acknowledge the excellent relationships we have enjoyed with the President of Convocation, Professor Eddie Maloko, and the President of the Student Representative Council, Declan Dyer. Appreciation is also owed to the Registrar, Royston Pillay, for his wise counsel, and to the combined ICTS, CMD and Alumni Office team for arranging tonight's virtual event. I also want to thank the Alumni Relations team, led by Libo Mesengana Bam, for their support during the year. So welcome everybody. Apologies will be recorded. I think that instructions have been put on the screen regarding the fact that we want to hear from you all. We want to be inclusive. However, this is going to be done using the live chat feature to pose questions and comments throughout this AGM. So hopefully, without any hitches regarding technology, we'll be able to swiftly move through the rather busy agenda. What I'd like to do now is move to the minutes of the annual general meeting, which was held on Wednesday, the 19th of February, 2020. And many of you will remember this. We were actually at that time all able to sit together and even enjoy snacks in the session before the meeting. But what I would like to do now, the screen in front of you reflects the minutes. I want us to approve the minutes, and I'm going to, once we've gone through the minutes, ask for a proposer and a seconder. Could I have a proposer, please?
I propose acceptance.
Thank you. And a seconder.
Second by me.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Russell. VC and Russell Ali. We now move on to matters arising from the minutes. Are there any matters arising? We haven't noted any on the agenda. In the absence of any matters being included in the chat or in the Q&A, what I'd like to do now then is move on to provide my report. I think that we come to this annual general meeting at a time when we all are reflecting and thinking, and the AGM affords us time to think together at a time of turbulence. COVID-19 has left none of us untouched. Many of us are mourning the loss of loved ones. Some of us are slowly recovering, whilst others continue to make their respective contributions to UCT's well-being using virtual classrooms and offices. I want to pay tribute to our students for their resilience and dedication to their studies, to staff and workers for their committed service, and I also want to express appreciation to all those members of the Faculty of Health Sciences who have been on the front lines of this crisis, going beyond the call of duty by helping those in need with such care and compassion. Currently, alumni at home and abroad, our students, staff and workers and donors are experiencing challenges none of us could have possibly imagined or foreseen. And amidst all of this, we have also lost an important member of our UCT family. Former UCT Vice-Chancellor and Emeritus Professor Dr. Stuart Saunders, who passed away on the 12th of February following a long illness. Tonight is indeed a time for reflection, compassion and gratitude. I would like everyone who's part of this AGM this evening to spend a quiet moment reflecting on the life of Professor Saunders and thinking about the people we love, those who have passed, and what we appreciate in our lives. While I was preparing for this AGM, I was reminded that Emeritus Professor Stuart Saunders, during his leadership term as Vice-Chancellor, established the Alumni Association, supported by the Alumni Advisory Board in the 1980s to facilitate engagement with alumni. This was before former Vice-Chancellor Mamphela Ramphele established the Development and Alumni Office. Dr. Saunders' vision was for UCT to deepen and strengthen ties with alumni wherever they were situated in the world, to build a vibrant and committed community to support UCT now and into the future. Building a strong alumni body was at its heart, despite the divisive and devastating apartheid politics of the day, and to embrace all our alumni and build an inclusive, non-racial institution in which everyone would feel a sense of belonging. That was Dr. Saunders' vision. Today, Convocation and the Alumni Association exist side by side. Each body serves different constituencies. Convocation presently only accommodates alumni who are graduates, whereas the Alumni Association is broader based, comprising members of Convocation and former students other than members of Convocation who have completed at least 1 year of study at UCT. Both bodies have continued to operate separately to date, despite sharing a common purpose in relationship building between the university and its alumni. Historically, both bodies held their AGMs on the same day, but owing to increased interest in university affairs, the two AGMs were then decoupled, allowing more time for discussion. The pattern developed that Convocation Annual General Meeting took place in December, whilst the Alumni Association AGM was held in the February of the following year. Following discussions of the Alumni Advisory Board and the President of Convocation, a motion was passed at the AGM of Convocation on the 9th of October to align Convocation with the Alumni Association. The Alumni Association will be asked to ratify this transition later this evening. The Alumni Advisory Board recognises that aligning the Alumni Association with Convocation requires careful consideration of the respective constituencies of each entity, ensuring that any reconstituted body does not inadvertently leave out the large number of alumni who have not yet graduated, a majority of whom are Black alumni. We also need to take care to ensure that the voices of alumni are not overshadowed by the professoriate and staff members. The primary function of alumni relations is to build an active alumni community that is dedicated to service. We owe it to Professor Saunders' legacy to encourage the growth and enlargement of this engaged, committed and inclusive alumni community. This is especially important given our history of an alumni community that was divided by our past of racial exclusion. In addition to ensuring that our traditional alumni remain invested in their alma mater, it is critical to reach out to disengaged alumni, predominantly Black alumni, who for the most part have had negative experiences of their time at the university. We're in the very fortunate position of having close to 170,000 alumni spread across 121 countries in the world, with an increasing number of our alumni coming from the rest of the African continent. The alumni community is fragmented along age, race, ethnicity and gender lines, with younger alumni constituting a largely disengaged grouping. Reconnecting younger alumni of colour with their alma mater must continue to be a key focus of work for Convocation Alumni and the Alumni Relations Office. In reaching out to alumni, we also need to seek ways to include disabled students, academics and workers. We need to dismantle barriers that undermine access to teaching, learning and research. This includes putting in place mechanisms to ensure that we do not leave any student behind. Connectivity, access to Wi-Fi, suitable study accommodation, all of these remain a challenge in this new normal of blended learning. This does mean doing things differently. Unless we're a fully inclusive institution, we will not succeed in our quest for excellence, sustainability and transformation. If alumni relations are conducted in an effective, thoughtful and consistent way, alumni become an invaluable resource for the university. Alumni are not only important in influencing the ranking of the universities, but also become major donors. A key indicator of any successful university in the world is how engaged alumni are with the university. The fact that we continue to enjoy top spot in international rankings is in no part due to the active engagement of our alumni. UCT is also the only African university listed in the Emerging Universities ranking. I'm therefore encouraged that our Vice-Chancellor, Professor Phakeng, takes very seriously engagement with alumni and recognizes that investing in alumni relations yields significant returns. Ongoing and outreach work, particularly through the establishment of new chapters and affinity groups, is testimony to this commitment. A few thoughts now on our special responsibilities. As chairperson of the Alumni Advisory Board, I'm inspired and motivated by our alumni and our students and the work being done to co-create transformation at UCT and in re-envisaging our identity as a proudly African institution. We are all members of a very special community. We have benefited from special opportunities through our education at UCT. We also have some incredibly special responsibilities. Even if some of these experiences have not been optimal in the past, as special UCT students, graduates or staff, we all have obligations arising from our close association with Africa's premier university. We have a responsibility to engage in open, respectful and honest conversation to listen to others even when we may vehemently disagree with each other. We have a responsibility to create a culture of respect and challenge inappropriate behaviours, especially those micro indignities that undermine individual self-worth and sense of belonging. We have the responsibility to serve our communities and give back whatever we can, whether in the form of time, skills, or funds. Transformation, as we all know, goes well beyond numbers. It faces up to people's lived experiences, which may be quite different from our own. Being willing to engage in open, respectful, and honest conversations, even when we disagree with each other. We're all in this together. COVID-19 has reinforced the importance of our human need to be connected with others, especially in a time of isolation, how we desperately seek companionship. If we stay silent or ambivalent in the face of injustice or inequality, we are part of the problem, not the solution. Now is the time for reflection, unity, and compassion in extraordinarily challenging times. We must move away from divisive language and focus on building a non-racial and inclusive campus in which everyone feels a sense of belonging. As Kamala Harris, the first Black, Asian, and female Vice President of the USA, said, "Now is the time for collective healing and unity. This will not be easy, but we must heal and unify." We need to listen carefully to her words. We should stop using the legacy of Professor Bongani Mayosi in ways that are divisive and not in the interests of the well-being of the university. Professor Mayosi was a shining example of what is possible at UCT, an extraordinary, exemplary scholar, friend, and leader, someone we should all seek to emulate. We as alumni need to embrace the changes envisaged in our new strategy, Vision 2030. As Bob Dylan said, the times they are a-changing. UCT belongs to all of us, students, workers, academics, and partners. We need to make a positive contribution to the institution's future and appreciate everyone's efforts who assist in achieving our vision and mission by living our values. We now need to put the communal interest before our own. Now is not the time for grandstanding, theatrics, or self-promotion. It is about humility and empathy, supporting the common good, and working together to secure our beloved UCT sustainability now and into the future. Thank you, alumni. I now would like to invite ICTS to show a video which is a tribute to our former Vice-Chancellor.
Greetings to you, colleagues, students, and all members of the UCT community. It is with a heavy heart that I speak to you today to convey the sad news of the passing of former UCT Vice-Chancellor, Professor Stuart Saunders. He passed away on the 12th of February 2021 after being ill for some time. Professor Saunders served the university exceptionally well for a remarkable 15 years, holding the role of Vice-Chancellor from 1981 until 1996. A former professor of medicine at UCT, he has remained an active part of the UCT family in various ways. The most recent is through the annual Dr. Stuart Saunders lecture held in his honor annually for the past 2 years. Professor Saunders led UCT for the most part during the darkest days of apartheid. It was under his venerated leadership that UCT's residences were open to students of all races. This move not only challenged the status quo during a time of segregation, but it also created the space for intellectual debates in an intolerant society. He is also regarded as being among those who played a role in putting an end to the racially segregated training of medical registrars. He played a leading role in driving the university's policy to provide education of international excellence and to be a leading research university. He will further always be remembered for initiating fundraising efforts among South African universities to ensure their academic freedom. In 2002, Professor Saunders was awarded the Order of the Baobab in silver, a national honor for South Africans for their distinguished service to their country. This spoke volumes, considering his immeasurable contribution to higher education. A physician by training, his cutting-edge medical research was recognized by no less than 7 local and international universities, which conferred honorary degrees on him. In the early 1990s, he established the UCT Trust in the United Kingdom and served as its board member post his time as Vice-Chancellor, illustrating his unwavering commitment to the institution. Over a period of 2 decades, Professor Saunders played an instrumental role within the Trust, spreading UCT's name in the UK specifically and in most parts of Europe. In his role as board member, he forged meaningful relationships and helped the Trust to raise millions for the university from foundations, companies, alumni, and friends. He retired from the board of the UCT Trust in May 2012, a year after celebrating his 80th birthday. Regarded as one of the university's most committed and called upon supporters, Professor Saunders also served as president of the UCT Heritage Society. He founded the society in the mid-90s to honor alumni and friends who had left a legacy, a bequest or provision to the university in their wills. Professor Saunders also authored a book titled Vice-Chancellor on a Tightrope, a personal account of climactic years in South Africa. The book title is a reference to the balancing act he had to perform whilst leading the institution through those turbulent and tumultuous years in our country. Professor Saunders' contribution to the institution, the medical field, the higher education sector, and to society at large will always bear testimony to the great man that he was. It is not possible to reflect fully on his legacy, his involvement with the institution, and the many roles that he has held within and outside the university, and do justice to this in just a few words. The Communication and Marketing Department will therefore be publishing further content reflecting on and celebrating his life in the next few days. This will be published on a dedicated feature page paying tribute to Professor Saunders. We convey our heartfelt condolences to his children, Jane and John, and the entire Saunders family, and to those who knew or worked with him. May his soul rest in peace.
I'd like to now invite the Vice-Chancellor to speak to the alumni. Over to you, Vice-Chancellor.
Thank you very much, Diana, and thank you for the opening and for the video celebrating Professor Stuart Saunders' journey at UCT. I want to start my presentation giving an update as to what happened in the last year, since this is an annual general meeting. 2020, as we know, wasn't an easy year. Tertiary institutions experienced it as tumultuous, with nearly half of the higher education institutions in South Africa completing the academic year by the end of 2020. As we speak, actually, there are universities that are still busy with academic year 2020 and aiming to complete by the end of February, March this year. UCT is one of the universities that managed to complete the academic year in December 2020. And this is all thanks to our academics as well as past staff, all of whom worked extraordinarily hard to ensure that remote emergency teaching works. Truth be told, it wasn't perfect. but we are comfortable with the quality we produced under the circumstances. With all the challenges that came with the pandemic of 2020, we ended the year with UCT doing exceptionally well. UCT's Graduate School of Business is the only business school in Africa to feature in the prestigious Financial Times 2021 rankings for full-time MBA programs. This after falling off the list in 2017, and it is good to be back on the Financial Times ranking at number 56 in the world. This is particularly gratifying as the Financial Times rankings are recognized as the most rigorous of the various global rankings of MBA programs. The research-only focused US News Best Global University Rankings released at the end of 2020 named UCT as top in Africa and is up 18 places to position 103. The previous year, UCT was ranked at number 121. It's also important to note that Wits came second at position 192 and Stellenbosch at third at position 321. This is worth noticing. We are also proud to have retained our spot as Africa's leading university in 2021, the Times Higher Education World University Rankings, published early in September 2020. We came out at number 155, and UCT was again the only university from the African continent in the top 200 universities globally. We also did well when it comes to subject rankings. In the US Best Global University Rankings the US Global University Rankings ranked 38 subject fields this year. At UCT, we came up tops. This year, 12,746 universities are ranked in the 38 subjects, and UCT ranked in 18 of the 38. In the top 100, we came out in the top 100 in 6 subjects. And in top 50, we came out 47th in immunology, and then social sciences and public health, we came out 53rd, microbiology, we came out 79th, psychiatry and psychology, we came out 92nd, and moved into the top 100 this round for the first time in psychiatry and psychology. And new in the top 10 is infectious diseases at UCT, ranked number 9. And in top 50 is public, environmental, and occupational health at number 36. And just outside the top 100 are clinical medicine at 103 and cardiac and cardiovascular systems introduced last year at number 109. The Shanghai ranking global rankings of academic subjects for 2020 indicate that UCT has been ranked among the top 100 universities in 4 subject areas. This is not shabby at all. And as I said, it's because of the capacity that we have. But I have to say that university rankings are not consciously our top priority. We do not have, as a university, a strategy to improve our rankings because we believe that if we focus on being excellent at what we do, we will automatically show up well in global rankings. After all, UCT's success story is much bigger than any ranking system can cover. That said, we know that rankings are not irrelevant, and they're an acknowledgement of our excellence, our scholarship, and a testament to the leadership and talent that we have across the university. But it was the best way to end the year. Another area where UCT has made significant and positive progress in 2020 is environmental sustainability. This despite the COVID-19 lockdown challenges. Noteworthy items of progress in moving towards an environmentally sustainable campus are as follows. We, in 2020, concluded an extensive technical and financial feasibility study for all buildings across all UCT campuses to determine which are the most feasible roofs to locate rooftop solar photovoltaic systems to generate renewable energy. The report found that 30 buildings are most feasible and that all together represent about 2.5 megawatt peak if UCT were to proceed with all 30. We are now exploring capital funding options, and we hope that implementation will begin in 2021 and is rolled out over the next 5 years. UCT's Avenue Residence Development achieved its 4-star Green Building rating in July last year, which is the first student housing project in the country to achieve a Green Star rating, and we are proud of this. Extensive work has gone into the planning of the D School to ensure it becomes UCT's greenest building to date, which is targeting a 6-star Green Star rating. This project started construction in September 2020 and will also have 63 kilowatt peak solar PV system on its roof, besides many other green building features. A detailed sustainable water management strategy has been developed for UCT with an ultimate goal of having a net zero water campus by 2050. And implementation of this strategy started in late 2020. There is a lot that I can update the Alumni Association Board about in terms of what we managed to accomplish in 2020. But we do not have the luxury of time. So I want us to look forward. As we speak, the South African higher education sector is now preparing for the 2021 academic year within the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic and the situation and the constraints of the amended Level 3 lockdown regulations. The second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, which was significantly worse than the first, has passed the peak both provincially and nationally. Although the size of the wave was greater than the first, largely due to the new variant, the decline in numbers of infections has been more rapid than seen in the first wave. Health specialists are expecting a third wave, as has been experienced in many other countries. UCT is being proactive, and our plans are geared to mitigate the risk by protecting staff and students in relation to the anticipated third wave. The second wave has also taken its toll on UCT staff and students. As at 1st February, the university has 326 reported cases of COVID-19 among non-health sciences staff members, with 262 recoveries. The reported number of students who have tested positive is 100. The university is saddened to report that we've lost 19 staff members and 2 students to the virus. That's the last time I checked the figures. We expect many students will come to us in March suffering from grief and loss, not only from COVID-19 deaths, but also the economic hardships of the pandemic. The organizational health unit has put together resource packs for our staff and students on how to heal with grief arising from the loss of family, friends, and colleagues, and the services from independent counseling and advisory services, ICAS, and student wellness services continue to be offered to staff and students for counseling and advice. In addition to the challenges of the pandemic, we are also starting the year 2021 with the passing of our former Vice-Chancellor, Professor Stuart Saunders. What a legacy he has left for us, and what a contribution he made, not only to UCT, but to higher education in South Africa as a whole. As we begin the implementation of our Vision 2030, Professor Saunders' legacy will serve as an inspiration as we work on ensuring a sustainable future for UCT. Of course, COVID-19 hit UCT while we were already engaging with Vision 2030 and our initial ideas about doing things differently in the academic world. And I want to put up a few slides on our Vision 2030. I'm gonna do this just so that we can share. I can share with you what we've been working on as the leadership. Just patience. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna speak to it because I can't put up the presentation. I'm gonna try. Let me try one last time. Let's see. All right. I'm just gonna speak to it. All right. So our vision is built on 3 inseparable values. And perhaps rather than just calling them inseparable, one should call them interdependent. Excellence, transformation, and sustainability. And the idea of these 3 pillars that are interdependent are based on the understanding of each of these concepts and what they mean for the university. So the first pillar of excellence is crucial. It's based on the understanding and agreement that looking into the future, excellence at UCT will remain a non-negotiable. A non-negotiable within the understanding that excellence, as much as we want it, we want to recognize it, encourage it, and grow it, it doesn't happen on its own. Excellence is enabled. And therefore, as we pursue it, we recognize it and grow it, we've got to understand that it shows up as it is right now, because historically, it was enabled that way. So as we look into the future, we need to understand the complexity of excellence. That excellence is not innocent, it is not benign, it can silence, it can marginalize, it can invisibilize. But we've got to pursue it with that understanding and therefore enable it in its diversity. And to enable it in its diversity, we need the pillar of transformation. The pillar of transformation that stems from the view and understanding that diversity actually is important, is an important part that will strengthen our future. And so transformation is not just about the amount of melanin in someone's skin, but it's about what people from diverse backgrounds bring to the space that can strengthen the university. But it's also an understanding that if we pursue excellence without transformation, we are actually weakening our capacity to reach the levels of excellence that are possible with diversity and inclusion. Transformation will make sure that our excellence is sustainable. Sustainable in every which way. If we pursue excellence and transformation together as interdependent, we will ensure the sustainability of the university, both in social terms, but also in financial terms. And of course, in environmental terms as well, because I'm sure many of you will know that we do some of the best sustainability research in the university. And so as we pursue transformation, we get everyone, every member of our community drawing on that research to create a sustainable world. Then we have a chance, starting that focus on environmental sustainability at UCT. And so our vision is based on these 3 pillars. Everything that we do, we want to make sure that the 3 pillars remain together because they're interdependent. If one of them becomes weak, the future of the institution is threatened. So our massive transformative statement is unleash human potential to create a fair and just society. That's our massive transformative statement, which we reached after a lot of engagement. And then we've got 4 goals. The first one being holistic, innovative, future-oriented education. That's what we want to develop. We want to make sure that our students come out with relevant education. They become graduates that are skilled in the technologically and scientifically in their areas of study, They can hold their own anywhere in the world, but they can also adjust in the changing world. They can lead in the changing world rather than expect things to be, only be able to function in the world of the past. We want them to be leaders. And the second one is we want to do research that solves Africa's problems and contributes to global knowledge. We recognize that our position in Africa is a strength, and we want to draw on that strength to have global impact. We understand that if we pursue research that solves Africa's problems, we will contribute to global knowledge, because in fact, what we have learned from COVID and many other problems of the world is that problems of the continent are also problems of the world. And often the world, comes to us, looks to us for solutions. If we don't pursue questions that solve our problems, then we might not be able to contribute to global knowledge. So we want to be able to do that. And then the third goal is about thought leadership. And this is to ensure that whatever we do at the university grows into outside the university to influence for a better world, a just world. And this we've got to do intentionally, being held by the 3 pillars of our vision. And then the last one, our last goal, is to build an organizational ethos that supports new ways of thinking, being, and doing. And the idea here is, if we're going to drive transformation and excellence together, then we've got to understand then there's a need of an institutional culture change, so that we can develop this ethos that's open to different ways of being, seeing, thinking, and doing. Not just for the sake of it, but because it is in doing that we strengthen our excellence. It is in that diversity that we'll begin to ask different questions that we wouldn't ask if we were just one group that thinks alike, looks alike, just does everything the same way. So this goal is about pursuing that idea of institutional culture change that can strengthen our excellence. During the lockdown, the executive presented UCT's Vision 2030 across the university. And in many ways, the lockdown environment was really important for us, because we interacted online and we managed to reach more staff members and engage more staff members online. And the more we went on with the roadshow virtually, the more questions and inputs we got. So for the first time, with a vision, we presented a vision to Senate and to Council that had been engaged with by a variety of people, starting with, at the base, different areas led by the different DVCs. Of course, the Vision 2030 task team was led by DVC Lange, who were asked to lead on behalf of the university. The other DVCs led, and the COO led their areas of operation. And more than 100 people came up with the first draft that then went to university. And the vision was approved by Senate and then Council at the end of 2020. It's a tall ask, and 2021 is our first year of implementing. We look forward to working with the alumni. The chair of the alumni board indicated the importance of the alumni, and I agree that the alumni are critical. And that's why when we have the first community we spoke to, when we got to lockdown, was the alumni. We will continue to engage, we will continue to listen as we move forward to make sure that UCT remains successful. Thanks very much, Chair. I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, VC, for a very comprehensive and inspiring address. Please remember, colleagues, that we need to note any questions in the live event question and answer table, and you need to post it there so that the VC can actually answer any of your queries.
Okay, I can see that there are some questions there. I see Babalo Chauke has asked a question. Okay, I see that Anonymous said, do not underestimate the number of not of color alumni that have also become disengaged. I think that's a valid point. I'm sure it was to you, Diana, and I'm sure we should work on that. I want to get to those. I see another Anonymous. Want to get to the questions that are about the VC. The conversation actually is about engaging alumni. I see questions and comments about the alumni. I don't see any questions addressed to what I've just spoken about. But we can take questions anytime, Diana, whether it's after the president of the SRC has spoken. I'll be happy to take questions if they come later as well. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. I was going to say, I think it's a good idea, gives everybody a chance to write in the question and answer section. And I think what we'll do now is move to invite the president, I should say, of the Student Representative Council, Declan Dyer, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. Over to you, Declan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Greetings to the alumni, members of convocation, members of the university executive, staff, students of the university, and all other stakeholders present here this evening. My name is Declan Dyer. I am a postgraduate student at the University of Cape Town, currently serving as the president of the Students Representative Council, or the SRC. I want to begin by taking this opportunity just to extend an appreciation to the chair of the Alumni Association and the association by extension for allowing the SRC to have a platform to speak here this evening. I will expand upon this a bit later, but it represents the beginning of a critical and necessary relationship between the SRC and the association. Mine this evening is to share with you all some of the ideas, projects and plans that the 2021 SRC has in place for the year ahead, and in particular to unpack how the alumni can support us in these endeavors. But of course, it is necessary just to speak about who the SRC is and what the SRC does. As a statutory body of the institution, the SRC is the highest decision-making structure of student governance. Houses to represent all students at the university and their overall interest and well-being, while simultaneously advocating to resolve the challenges that they face. We value cooperative governance, not only working with the management of the institution, but also a wide variety of student governance structures in different spaces, such as the residences, societies, sporting codes, and faculty councils, just to name a few. As an SRC, our team consists of 15 elected students from different ideological backgrounds, fields of study, political organizations, and regardless of these differences in political and ideological backgrounds, the SRC this year shares a collective desire to disrupt all spaces of the institution. And it's from this that we derive our vision. So our vision for 2021 is simply to disrupt, quote unquote. A powerful and unconventional statement. This vision reaffirms our pursuit of being a radical force to shake the status quo of this institution in all spaces that we enter and on all matters with which we deal, we seek to disrupt. Of course, disruption manifests in a variety of ways. Just today we had a bit of a reflection session on what this vision of to disrupt means to us. For us, just being present can be a disruption. In certain spaces of the university, our mere existence is a disruption. Our voices, our commitment to the cause of students this vision of Tutor Setup manifests in all these different ways. We are preparing a more substantive report on our vision as well as on our mission, and we will and our plans for the year. And once that is finalized and presented, of course, to the student body, we will ensure that it is circulated to all internal and external stakeholders. But just for now, I wanted to give you a sense of our vision and what we stand for. But for now, as well, of course, I do just want to speak to some of our plans and ideas. Of course, financial exclusion remains a massive concern and an incredibly violent act to the working class. And as those who have come before us, we intend on continuing this generational mission, quote unquote, to ensure fee-free education, higher education in our lifetime. But until such is realized, of course, we have a number of strategies in place to assist with financial exclusion and students who face financial exclusion. The SRC holds an assistance fund which annually raises funds to assist with the clearance of fee debt and acts as the final safety net for those who do not qualify for assistance from the university or have no other alternative to clear their fee debt. The bulk of the funds are drawn from corporate sponsorship and promotions that are run on campus. The Senate, of course, having delegated control of the plaza and notice boards to the SRC for this purpose. With the closure of the institution in 2020 and the inability to run promotional activations on campus for the foreseeable future, the fund has taken the knock and relies now more than ever on the generous contributions of alumni and donors. Through the Department of Development and Alumni, the SRC will in future call upon the alumni to support in raising funds for the benefit of all students and to go towards the SRC Assistance Fund. Just today, in fact, we approved a bit of an ambitious target of 1 million for the 2022 Assistance Fund cycle. Very attainable goal, but ambitious nonetheless. And we look forward to that. Of this year, the SRC will also be launching an Afri Fund, which is quite similar to the Assistance Fund, but which will prioritize students of the African continent the African continent, but living outside the borders of South Africa. There's a significant, or rather an overwhelming lack of funds for students of the continent and the diaspora. And we intend on working with the Alumni Association this year to reach out to the alumni chapters across Africa and the world to support the establishment of this fund. Of course, we know that the alumni can offer support beyond financial contributions. The SRC will be seeking to host numerous virtual engagement sessions with alumni throughout the year, and we will regularly issue calls through this association for speakers on a variety of topics, and we hope that the alumni will come forward to participate. Equally, we are willing to avail ourselves to assist the alumni in this association when we are called upon to do so. While ours is first and foremost students, we develop, or rather we value developing relationships, and we look forward to strengthening ties with the association in the future. Very briefly, I just want to share some non-alumni related plans for the year to highlight the extent to which this SRC will be looking and working across the university. We will be embarking on an intersectional crusade to mete out all contradictions within this university. We recognize that the issues our students face are intersectional and extend beyond race. Hence, contradictions of sexuality, gender, and class, to name a few, will also be intentionally dealt with. Gender-based violence within the university spaces remains a massive concern and will equally be dealt with through this intersectional crusade. We're embarking on. It would be a bit premature to speak on more, or rather to give some examples of our plans here, as engagements are still happening with the different units of the university. But those will go into the more substantive report we release once we conclude our strategic planning sessions on Saturday. We plan to elevate the voice of students with disabilities through the formation of a forum for students living with disabilities, which will also have seats within the student parliament, be formally recognized by the SRC as a governance structure, and just, of course, elevate the voices of students living with disabilities. Beyond this, access is a massive priority for us, going beyond physical access, but also into the spaces of the institution that remain exclusionary. either through high subscription fees or just toxic cultures. Environmental sustainability is important to us, and we've in fact approved today the establishment of a special internal committee that will work with student organizations and the various units of the institution to ensure that the SRC has put input on the policies and the projects of the institution in respect of environmental sustainability. These are just but a few of the many ideas and initiatives we have planned, and as mentioned a few times before, we will prepare a more substantive report to circulate. As I conclude, I want to share 3 brief final points. When we took office, we told the student community that we find ourselves at a critical transition. To us, this represented a new chapter for student governance at the university, one where we would advocate intentionally for student interests, prioritize action in all that we do, listen with compassion, and ensure meaningful change. Hope that tonight represents a similar critical transition, a new chapter for collaboration between the SRC and the Alumni Association. Also, of course, want to take a moment to acknowledge the work of our healthcare workers in combating the virus. More so, I want to extend the appreciation of the SRC to the health sciences students, as well as the workers of classes 1 through 6, who have been on the ground throughout the pandemic and the lockdown, doing their part to service the university and the country. Finally, we take this moment to remember the students and staff members we have lost, as well as to those who have lost loved ones to this monstrous pandemic. We extend our sincerest condolences and call upon all to please continue to wear masks, practice social distancing, and comply with all other COVID-19 protocols. Alumni, I wish you all well. Thank you again for the opportunity this evening. I look forward to future engagements, and I'm equally happy to take questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Declan, for your contribution, which has been much appreciated. I'm encouraging everyone to put questions down that can be raised later. I noticed that there are a number of questions which we will deal with later on, but please use the live chat feature so that we can capture your questions. I think that what I'm going to suggest now is, VC, do you want to reply to questions that you've received?
Yes, I see 2 questions. One is from Dr. Malene Leroux, I think, and then the other one is from Paballo Chauke. Malene is asking, can you perhaps say more about transformation and persons with disabilities? And Paballo Chauke is saying, how do we ensure that we do not alienate people through the transformation project? Let me start with Malene's question. I mean, the people living with disabilities are at the center of our transformation project. As you know, you might be aware, we've got an office, a disability office, and I think across the country, all the universities in the country probably offer the most substantial support to people living with disabilities, not just scholarships, but also in terms of the academic project, particularly teaching and learning. I think where we are lagging behind is making sure that all parts of the campus are accessible. That's one thing that we need to be working on, that is costly, but it's something that's on our radar screen. But in terms of support that we give to people living with disabilities to succeed, in particular, not to be disadvantaged in terms of teaching and learning and research, I think we do our best for even students who might have an accident, be involved in an accident and maybe damage their hand or whatever. We immediately move them to disability service to get the same. So that's how excellent the service is. So I'm comfortable that we're doing that. Of course, we continue to mobilize because historically, for example, our student financial aid doesn't have a ring-fenced funding for students living with disabilities. We have historically been funded by, the past few years being funded by First National Bank, And this year the funding stopped because, you know, financial constraints and how companies have done. So we're busy mobilizing funding for students living with disabilities to make sure that there's scholarships, so that we're trying to make sure that it's important to have ring-fenced funding for students living with disabilities. Otherwise, if you throw them into the big pot, inevitably they get marginalized, if you like. So that's one thing that we're working hard at. I think this links perfectly to the question by Paballo. How do we make sure that we do not alienate people through the transformation project? I mean, I think, in my view, the first thing that we are very conscious about, and it's always a point of debate for me, is the language we use. The polarizing language that we use. So we've had long debates. Many of the people who are in the room, who are alumni and staff, would know that, you know, some of the feedback we got as we're presenting our vision were in the language that was used when the transformation portfolio was talking about transformation strategy. So if we talk about wide accountability as something that's gonna solve whether it's racism or whatever in the university, it's almost like you see the past, the only way to deal with the challenges of our past in terms of racial polarization, in terms of just holding white people accountable. First of all, I think the language is problematic, but I think the big thing is, how do we see where we come from, and how do we think we can deal with this baggage, if you like, that we have as a country. And from where I'm sitting, the way to see it in such a way that it doesn't alienate people, is to recognize that, in fact, our past, our brutal past of apartheid, wounded both sides. Wounded people who may be seen as economically privileged, the poor. It wounded both sides, the oppressed and the oppressor. Both were wounded. They were wounded in different ways, but they carry scars, big scars and wounds by their very nature. Look different. Some are deep, some are dry, some are whatever, but they're a wound anyway. And with woundedness comes pain. And pain, pain evokes anger, disappointment, and all sorts of things. And then you see them in response to many other situations. And I'm putting it this way because I'm saying the burden of the past is carried by both Black and white people, everyone in between. We all carry the burden of the past, and we all need some healing. We all need to go through some healing. That's the beginning part of the story, to make sure that, in fact, you can't alienate. Alienation comes from saying you are fine because actually you are advantaged, we are not fine, so please stand aside, let's just sort out people. I think everyone needs to be sorted, but it depends what's the sorting out. The anger would be from different things. I mean, the part of the anger can be what the transformation means for people and makes people feel alienated. When a white male, a young white male student who's working incredibly hard, getting the results, everything, but knows that they will stand at the end of the queue because of the history of them, it will evoke anger. We shouldn't be surprised when we see the anger. So I'm not surprised when I see the anger, because I'm saying we are wounded. But in the same way, when you see the other extreme of anger, where you have a Black African woman who works really hard and brings things on the table, has got the qualifications, experience, but they can never be good enough, then you get angry. So there's extreme things. They can never be good enough because at the just appearance, they're interpreted as an affirmative action candidate. So you've got these extreme ends. they evoke anger. And we've got to say, how do we heal? There's got to be a time where we recognize that and we deal with that. And so when we talk about, for example, recruitment, when we talk about Vision 2030, we've been talking about this in the exec as the importance of recruiting talented people from everywhere else in the world, balancing that with the transformation agenda. Okay, so how do you do that? Which means if you can't leave extremely talented people and not recruit them if you have a space, but you've dealt with the transformation. So it's a delicate balance of that. You want talent, you want diversity, you want international university, because we are a global university. We want that diversity even in terms of where people come from. It is good for our students. And so you don't want a campus that's only 100% people from designated groups. It's not good for our education. Our students their education will be impoverished if it's that way. And so you want the diversity. So the trick is to think about what does that diversity look like. And in that way, everyone has got to feel that they have something to contribute to the university. But to get there, we need to look at the moment, we are not representative. We still have a longish way to go. The institutional culture is not necessarily inclusive. And so we've got to walk that journey as we play this balancing effect and understanding the woundedness of all of us in the community. Probably is a long answer I gave, but I'm trying to explain the complexity of this transformation and ensuring that people are not alienated. It starts with the language we use and recognizing that, in fact, you can't just blame the people who are here now and say they carry all the responsibility of making sure that we have a transformed institution. All of us carry the responsibility. Without all of us carrying the responsibility, the campus is not going to change. We're going to come up with another version of marginalization that's not going to serve the university well. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Vice-Chancellor, for your responses. I wonder if we could now turn to, are there any questions for Declan, for the SRC President? If not, I don't think there have been any. I'd like to thank both the Vice-Chancellor and the President of the SRC for excellent presentations, which I think we really appreciate. I think now we would like to move to the motions. And I think that we've clarified with the individual proposers and seconders what the process is, but what I'll do is call on the proposer of the motion number 1, who is Professor Kit Vaughan, to talk through the motion. I'm a seconder for that motion, and I think you've already heard my support for it in my original address. But I think that very importantly, voting will then take place after the motions have been put and seconded, and there will be a chance for a right of reply following the discussion. So I'd like to now call on Emeritus Professor Kit Vaughan to propose motion number 1.
Thank you very much, Diana. Just checking, is my voice heard by people? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much, Mamokgethi. So the motion that I'm proposing and that Diana is seconding is the following. we call on members of the Alumni Association to ratify a motion which was approved by the UCT Convocation on the 9th of December 2020, which provides for the Alumni Advisory Board, the AAB, to serve as the Executive Committee of Convocation on an interim basis, and that's for a period of 1 year. This proposal aims to bring the Alumni Association and the Convocation together to rationalize and ensure closer cooperation with the President of Convocation and to provide the necessary support for the President of Convocation. And let me provide a little bit of background. The UCT Convocation is a statutory body recognized within the government, whilst the UCT Alumni Association is a voluntary association whose purpose includes the promotion of support for UCT from amongst its members and to assist in fundraising activities. So the primary motivation for this motion was to develop the infrastructure to support the President of Convocation, and this is not currently provided for in the university's statute. The motion that was approved by Convocation back in December would result in the rationalization of resources, and this approach was in line with most other South African universities. So we're currently managed by an Alumni Advisory Board, and this consists of the President of Convocation, the members of the Council, of which I'm one, elected by Convocation, and 7 additional members elected by the Alumni Association at the AGM. In contrast, the office of the President of Convocation does not enjoy similar infrastructure or committee support. It is just one person. And so what we seek in this motion is to support a transitional arrangement for the next year, during which we hope to put in place concrete proposals that can be developed for the rationalization process, including the structure, the governance, and the budgetary implications. We envisage that the interim period would be for this year, 2021, and during which time the chairperson of the Alumni Advisory Board, Dianna Yach, and the President of Convocation would work together to facilitate arrangements. So that is the motion and that is the background. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I now open up the floor for comments and questions. And I don't see any, so what I would suggest then is that we move to cast our votes.
Diana, if you can hear me?
I can hear you.
If you just explain to, I see a question as to why it's interim, maybe you explain that it's only council that can make this permanent by changing the statute, and so this is why this is interim until council changes the statute to change this structure.
Thank you, Russell. I think you've explained very well that the interim structure, during that period, we would also work up a proposal which will have to go to council to make the necessary changes. And also we will be working very closely with the President of Convocation, so that procedurally we are aligned with good practice. Thank you. The screen is up and the results of motion 1 are as follows: 36 in favour, 2 not in favour and 1 abstention. Thank you very much, colleagues. I'd like to now move to motion 2 and invite the proposer of that motion, Martin Plaut, to speak to the motion.
Thank you very much. Chair. That is not the motion. The motion is considerably longer than that. I don't know why you're showing that on the screen. Can you please show the full motion?
The full motion was on the website, but would you like to read the motion, please?
I didn't intend to, but if you wish me to, I will.
Please do. Please do.
Thank you. It reads as follows. The alumni of UCT have witnessed with growing concern the resurgence of intolerant racial essentialism at the university, where once this was enforced by the apartheid regime, it is now promoted by a woke administration. Ever since fallist protesters were allowed to rampage across the campus without facing real sanctions, terrorizing staff and students, and destroying cultural objects in their attack on colonialism and whiteness, an atmosphere of fear has hung over the university. The alumni also notes with alarm the concern raised by the outgoing university ombud about bullying and the fear of retribution this provokes, undermining what should be a university community. Academics have been prevented from lecturing on campus, have had their research condemned as racially offensive without any prior due process, and many have resigned. Most tragically of all, the suicide of Professor Bongani Mayosi has been attributed in large part to the lack of adequate support by the university, and especially to aggressive condemnation on the part of fallist students for supposedly being a race traitor. We call on the university administration to take active steps to address what is clearly becoming an increasingly racially divided and divisive culture of condemnation and bullying on the campus. Urgent steps must be taken to build a culture of non-racialism and to ensure that UCT becomes a place where study, research and teaching can continue unimpeded by intolerance. Chair, I'll now speak to the motion, if I may. It is an honor and a privilege to be with you. As the chair asked for an open and honest conversation, that is exactly what I intend to try to provoke. The last time I appeared before an entire university community was back in 1976, during the Soweto uprising. My university then, which was WITS, was attempting to throw me out. I was part of a small group who had criticized the university administration for attacking our demonstration in support of the children of Soweto. Unbelievable it may now sound, but it is true. William Kentridge and I took on the Vice-Chancellor and the Professor of Philosophy. It was a daunting experience for young men, but one that I do not regret. UCT has a long and honorable tradition. We can count Nobel Prize winners amongst our alumni, and we fought against the rising tide of racialism. In 1957, when apartheid came lapping at our doors, we came together with WITS to resist it, fighting for our academic freedom. Yet the government of the day forced through the 1959 Act, which deprived us of our right to teach and to be taught by whoever we saw fit, irrespective of their racial classification. In 1968, despite legislation, UCT appointed a black lecturer. Archie Mafeje was eminently qualified, and when the university, responding to government pressure, withdrew his appointment, I, along with 600 other students, didn't take it lying down. We began occupying the Bremner building, demanding his reinstatement by the council. Sadly, we failed, and Professor Mafeje paid a terrible price. I paid one too, as did many others, and it took me many years to return to UCT and gain a degree. But I never flinched from the fight against racialism in all its forms. It was with the greatest happiness that I witnessed Nelson Mandela walk free and apartheid finally ended. When I returned to UCT to conduct research that led to a biography of Dr. Abdullah Abdurrahman, and here it is, I'm pleased to say that it has now been published by Jacana, and I hope you will enjoy it. He was surely one of the most illustrious of Cape Town's citizens, and I witnessed a campus on which young men and women of all colours mixed and mingled freely. What a joy it was to behold. Yet all was not well. What has befallen UCT is ugly indeed. A new form of racialism introduced under the guise of wokeness has taken hold. Anyone who challenged this all-pervasive cancer has been singled out, denounced as a racist, pilloried on social media, threatened, and even physically attacked. It has become a religion whose veracity is beyond criticism. The Rhodes statue that always made me feel very uneasy, but did me good for reminding me of our contentious past, was daubed and then removed. Artworks were burned. Lecturers were abused, attacked, and some even driven from the campus. The work of the Ombud in revealing a pattern of bullying was not embraced as it should have been. Finally, and most tragically, the death of one of the country's most eminent scholars, Professor Bongani Mayosi. And I have read this afternoon the UCT report on his death, and it is terrible what it reveals, and I hope everyone has. It should not be just pushed under the carpet. It was a tragedy. The state of affairs is not one that we can celebrate. It's one that must change. UCT must become what it always should have been, a beacon for South Africa in which academic excellence is pursued. It must be a place where men and women are encouraged to flourish, irrespective of their race or ethnicity. I will end with the words of George Orwell. If liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. It's a stand that I took when I faced Wits after the Soweto uprising. It's a stand that I take today. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Martin. I'd like to now open it up for comments from the floor.
Should it not be moved by the seconder?
Oh, sorry, yes. If the seconder would like to speak.
Thank you. As in the case of Martin, let me express appreciation for the opportunity to address members of the university community. It's been a very, very long time since I indeed did this. I'm trying to work it out. It could be close to 20 years. In speaking in support, much has already been said by the VC, among others, that would feed into why it is that I feel obliged to support the motion. Mention has been made of Bongani Mayosi and Stuart Saunders. The university tribute to Stuart Saunders directly speaks to the issue by noting his efforts to promote UCT as a space for intellectual debate in an intolerant society, whereas Mayosi's death arises almost directly from the intolerance to which he was subjected. So I'm concerned that UCT is in danger of becoming a space that's intolerant. I say this from a particular personal history, growing up in a home that had come through the persecution and intolerance of the early 20th century, Germany, Russia, and South Africa. And in some ways, this seems to have radicalized me very young, and in part explains why I joined the liberation movement in exile, put myself and my family in harm's way. I did it then, and I would do it again. But it's insufficient to be negatively critical. I support what Martin has said, and I would not want to be misconstrued as in any way defending the status quo. Deep change is needed of all, of people, communities, institutions, and that change begins, in my view, with language, with learning how to hear one another. And quite frankly, I think we are deaf, and it's not a failure of UCT, it's actually a failure of the nation-building process, that instead of in 1994, understanding the divisions that apartheid had sown through language, nothing really was done to bring us closer together. So if I say, Kiutla Wena, I hear you, most of us don't know what I'm talking about. The VC will. Learning how to hear one another, to converse, to engage, it relates directly to what the venerated scholar and activist W.E.B. Du Bois aspired to. He aspired to a world of infinitive and valuable variety in thought and dream, fantasy and imagination, in gift, aptitude and genius, in which there can be no perfect democracy curtailed by color, race or poverty. So my call would be, taking this into the positive quadrant, that we reflect very deeply on the role that language is playing in dividing us, in maintaining the division, in keeping people back, in keeping people out, whether they are students or personnel, because language is at the heart of culture. And if we do not have the means to communicate in many languages, we indeed, and I refer particularly to the formerly advantaged, in fact are permanently disadvantaged. So that would be my plea, and I support the motion. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you very much. What I'd like to ask is, Martin, you the mover of the motion, can you refer to the questions or the comments in the chat and respond to some of the comments that have been made?
I think I'd rather hear the discussion and then I shall reply.
Sorry, Diana, it's not possible for people to speak. It's only some of us who are actually here as
That's right.
participants who can speak. The rest can only use the chat feature, and I think it wouldn't be proper for any of us to use the fact that we can speak. We also have to put our questions in the question and answer chat, and Martin and the seconder are free to to respond.
Or perhaps you can suggest find a couple of them that you wish me to respond to. I mean,
let me read one which I'm not sure who it's from, but I think it is from Maxi. If not, I'm not mistaken, Emeritus Professor Spiegel. But if it's not, then I apologize. And this is what was in the chat. It says this motion must be rejected. It asserts that all divisiveness on campus is based on racist intolerance, allegedly expressed by those who have been forced to occupy subaltern status, an utterly false premise. It must be rejected because it calls for a rebuilding of a culture of non-racialism when no such culture has ever been dominant at UCT. Many strenuous efforts notwithstanding, such a culture has never been realized on campus. Had Plaut et al. Had to face an in the old days argument from septuagenarians, such as they are using now, they would have treated it with disdain. The same needs to happen now. So that was in the question and answer chat.
Martin, do you want to reply to this one, or do you want Russell to read the other comments that have been received in the chat?
Yes, let him treat it like a debate, and I will hear the points, and then I will respond.
And this is from Lindikushle Patewe. This motion must be rejected with the contempt it deserves. It is indeed a shame that all people like Professor Kahn and Mr. Plaut can use the tragic death of Dr. Mayosi to push a racist agenda like this. Racist research must not be hidden under nonsensical ideas of free speech. First of all, there is no evidence put forward by the Ombud that the bullying that took place was due to some woke agenda. This is a racist motion hiding itself as progressive. It must be rejected. Let me read another one. If motion 2 is in reference to fees must fall, we all know that students are allowed to protest lawfully, of course, and those who contravened and went against the rules of the institution during the protest were apprehended. Why are we dwelling in the past when we have burning issues at hand, such as transformation and student debt? What are we trying to achieve with this motion? So that's just some of the comments, Martin.
Right, I'm happy to reply. I mean, I'm sorry that people use terms like disdain and contempt. And as the second speaker put it, he or she, I don't know which it was, accused me of a racist agenda, which of course is exactly what I predicted when I described what a woke agenda asks for. It's a cancer, as it says, which denounces everything as racist and pilloried on social media. So this is exactly what I would have expected in this kind of thing. But let me say that the real problem is where UCT is right now. And the university has sadly, I'm afraid, fallen in the rankings. It was something that the Vice-Chancellor did unfortunately not tell us about. It's really sad that the university has slipped 52 places in the Times Higher Educational World Ranking in the last decade. It's a shocking indictment on the Vice-Chancellor and her administration. Of course, it's not her that suffers. It's the students seeking to get into universities abroad. It's about UCT's ability to attract the best and the brightest academic staff, and that is where the price will be paid. There's absolutely no reason why students from impoverished families should not be helped. By poverty and destitution exists in all communities in South Africa. It is no respecter of race or of wealth and privilege. 10 years ago, I visited a young miner who was doing all she could to feed and clothe her family. She was Primrose Jibavu, and she was working for a firm called Aurora. She, like thousands of others, had not been paid for months on end. Meanwhile, the managers sold off everything they could. They stripped the place bare. The managing director of Aurora was Zonda Mandela, grandson of Nelson Mandela, and the chairman was Gulubusa Zuma, nephew of President Jacob Zuma. Another board member was Michael Hulley, the personal legal advisor to the president. Despite having no previous experience in mining, the High Court gave the liquidators the control of 2 gold mines. The new owners promised everything, delivered nothing. That's what privilege does in South Africa, and it has nothing to do with race. It is about the way you behave and the way that you exist. And frankly, that is what I would like to see remedied, that people are judged by who they are and by what they contribute, not by the color of their skin. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think that we're now in a position where we've taken the comments, and I'd like to suggest we move to a vote.
Yeah, supported Anna, that we move to the vote.
Thank you.
Unless I think, unless the VC needs to respond, because that was a fairly sort of strong statement around rankings. I don't know, VC, if you want to respond.
Thank you, Chair. If you allow me, just briefly, Mr. Plaut is not giving the full information. In fact, in 2019, UCT for the first time led in all 5 major international World University rankings. For the first time, that has never happened before. I didn't give all the information. You know, I could have told you that for the second time, we became number 39, the most international university. There's been a lot of improvement, and I told you that UCT had fallen off the Financial Times rankings for MBAs, and this year, 2020, when the 2021 rankings were announced, we are back in the top 100 and up there in the top 100, the only university in the continent. Maybe something happened before this VC came into office, but certainly we are on our way up. Nothing has declined since 2018 July. But if you look at universities throughout, I mean, we benchmark with other universities in the country and elsewhere. And the reason I was telling you where Wits and Stellenbosch were is to give you perspective. We went down on the Times Higher Education World University Rankings because of the citations. It's not because of anything racialized or anything like that. We haven't, the last time we suffered actually a lot of stuff, and we even wrote about it, was in 2017 when an analysis was done of attrition. But since then, we haven't had an exodus that Mr. Plaut is talking about. I think it is heartwarming to see our alumni who are so interested, committed to seeing their university flourish. I am encouraged. I think this is an important debate. It's an important contribution. I am encouraged by that. What worries me is the polarization of the motion. I think everything else, interest and challenge is welcome. We try by all means to try not to polarize in our documents, and I request that we refrain from the polarization, because we are exacerbating the problem as we try to challenge it, which is not so helpful. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
A comment.
May I speak, Chair?
Yes, if you'd like to.
I would assume I have some right of reply, and having heard some of the feedback from the House, I do want to reply. Particularly as a Monomaholo, an old man, I find that pejorative, complete with whiteness and everything else, in a way exemplary of the extent to which debate is being cheapened. So that I find particularly worrying. On the issue of rankings, this has got nothing to do with the assertion that UCT has fallen in the rankings. I just want to add a perspective which is objectively correct. And it is that the way the Times Higher Education rankings work is that various categories are gathered together, and one of them is international. And UCT scores very well there, primarily because it has the highest proportion of international students in the country at postgraduate level. I'm not sure what its level of international staff is, but it's probably among the highest as well. And it also measures international co-publication, and UCT does very well there because of its involvement in big science, in astronomy, and the global burden of disease projects and so on. All of these are under threat for two reasons. And it's likely that the South African universities will all slide in the next ranking because of that international COVID and the restriction on mobility. And the other one is, and that is from the NRF, which has decided to cut back its funding for international students from Africa and everywhere else to no more than 5% of what it was before. So it's got nothing directly to do with the debate, but it's part of the way that the university sees itself, understands itself, functions in a diverse environment. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, can I just read one more comment before you put it to the vote?
Yes.
So this is, I think, also from Emeritus Professor Maxi Spiegel. Plaut has referred to Archie. How would he have responded to this motion had he been alive and with us now? I'm sure he'd have rejected the motion. This motion is utterly blind to local context and reflects an expatriate neocolonial position that it projects onto the local political context. I will vote against this motion.
Chair, may I just say something to this? This is quite extraordinary. The right to reply comes at the end of the debate, not in the middle of the debate. I don't understand how it's been possible for the the Vice-Chancellor, and then these remarks to be made after the debate has closed with my reply. This is extraordinary. This is no way to conduct a debate.
Chair, I understand the comments, but I think we just need to accommodate the fact that this platform limits the ability of those who are actually on the call to participate. They're not able to actually speak, and I think that we should just make some allowances given that this medium has these limitations.
Thank you, Russell. I think that's why I've tried to be accommodating, because I've wanted to include as much as we can, given the limitations of this technological world we're living in. But I'd like to thank the mover and the seconder. I'd also like to thank all those who made comments in the chat room. I'm sure this discussion will continue, but I would like to now move to the vote. The results are in, and the results are as follows. 16 voted in favour, 54 not in favour, and 3 abstentions. Thank you very much. The motion does not pass. I wanted to say thank you to everyone, and I wanted to repeat, by way of concluding this annual general meeting, my prayer is that we should move away from divisive language and focus on building a non-racial and inclusive campus in which everyone feels a sense of belonging. Now is the time for collective healing and unity. This won't be easy, as Kamala Harris said, but we must heal and unify. Thank you all for attending this evening. Your attendance and participation is very much appreciated. Good night.